The hallway still smelled like her perfume, light and floral, but it wasn't the same without her there. All that was left was a sticky note on the fridge, a smiley face drawn above it in black marker, her handwriting. 30 days, it read. No texts, no guilt, no you. Then I'm all yours. That was her proposal, clean, simple. She called it her reset. I didn't have a name for it because she hadn't given me the chance to react. The night before, she stood in our living room with her duffel bag already packed, zipped tight. No tears, no hesitation. She radiated this calm confidence, like someone about to embark on a long-awaited vacation, one she'd planned without consulting anyone else. After this, she said, I'll do what you want. Counseling, that weird retreat, whatever rom-com makeover you've been dreaming of. But first, she needed a month without me. I laughed then, a weak, nervous laugh that felt hollow even as it left my lips. So I'm an emotional detox? I joked. She kissed the air, not even close enough to touch me. You're sweet when you get it. And like a fool, I agreed. I won't pretend I was the perfect husband. Birthdays slipped my mind more often than they should. Conversations about her coworkers, I zoned out. I wasn't athletic or mysterious or particularly talented at anything except spreadsheets and reheating leftovers. But I never imagined she'd want time away from me, or worse, plan it so deliberately. Still, I held on to hope. For 6 days, I tried to respect her terms, clinging to the idea that she'd come back, renewed, ready to fix us. But loneliness has a way of gnawing at your resolve. On the 7th day, I opened her laptop, not to snoop, just to feel closer to her. Pathetic, right? But when I saw she hadn't logged out of her synced cloud, curiosity got the better of me. New files appeared. Pictures of her in Miami, standing on a balcony in a green dress. A man's hand rested on her waist and then slid inside the fabric. The folder was labeled, No Regrets, April. I slammed the laptop shut like it had burned my hands. My chest tightened. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the realization that she hadn't planned to return to me. That sticky note on the fridge suddenly felt like a cruel joke. At first, I did exactly what she expected. Sat around rereading old texts, watching sad movies with a pint of ice cream balanced on my lap. But by day 7, something shifted. Anger bubbled up. Not loud or destructive, but quiet and seething. Her reset wasn't a pause, it was a door closing, and she assumed I'd wait patiently on the other side. That's when I called her mom, casually asking if she'd heard from Jessa. "Oh, honey," her mom replied, sending me a photo from Turks and Caicos. Palm trees, sunsets, and a man whose arm was draped over Jessa's shoulder. My wife told me she was staying with her friend Lacey to unplug. Instead, she was lounging oceanside with Carter, a name I recognized. He wasn't just some stranger. He was an old coworker, someone she used to complain about. "He thinks he's so clever," she'd say dismissively. Clever enough, apparently, to become part of her life again. I didn't confront her. What would be the point? The truth was already glaringly clear. Her absence wasn't about self-discovery or healing. It was about moving on. And here I was, left holding on to a sticky note that now felt meaningless. I didn't yell or send angry texts. Instead, I climbed up to the attic and found the shoebox where she'd kept every anniversary card I'd ever written her. I opened them and read through each one again. God, I sounded so naive. Writing those sappy poems, promising her forever, saying things like, "You complete me." Back then, I believed in love so deeply, even when it wasn't returned in kind. Looking back, I wanted to shake that version of myself awake. By the 10th day, I decided if she needed space, I'd give her more than she asked for. I withdrew cash from our shared account and booked a cabin by a quiet lake 3 hours away. No internet,
No neighbors, just me, the water, and the storm brewing inside me. I started writing letters, not to her, but to myself. Letters I wish I'd written years ago. Notes reminding me, you're not boring, you're loyal. She mistook loyalty for weakness, but I wouldn't make that mistake again. On the 14th day, I finally opened the envelope she'd left behind. She said it was something to comfort me when I missed her. Inside was an itinerary, hotel bookings, dinner reservations, spa treatments, all under her name and someone else's. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. It was planned, packaged, executed with precision. Like I was just the excuse she needed to leave without guilt. But I wasn't going to beg her to stay. 30 days? Fine. But by day 31, I wouldn't be here.
Not in this house, not in her life, not in the story she was writing, where I waited patiently while she tasted freedom. Let her taste it. She had no idea what freedom truly cost. The betrayal itself wasn't the worst part. It was how calm she was about it. No remorse, no drama, just a neatly printed plan, as if this were some business trip she deserved. That's when something inside me stopped breaking and began transforming. I wasn't going to be the abandoned husband anymore. If she wanted 30 days, I'd give them to her, but on my terms. I started small. Quietly, I transferred our savings into a separate account, one with only my name attached. After all, she'd used our money to fund a getaway with another man. Now she'd pay for it. I wasn't careless, though. I logged in from a library computer 2 towns over. No digital footprints, no phone signals. Next, I sold my car. It was old and barely running, but I took what I could get and paid off the last of our joint bills. Then I canceled the utilities for the house, scheduling them to shut off on day 29. I even filed a change of address form, redirecting her mail to her parents' place. She didn't want contact, she'd get none. But she also wouldn't get warnings. And the bitterest part of me smiled as I worked. Late at night, I wrote a letter, one I wouldn't send until the very end. Not out of spite, but because timing mattered. When she came back, I wanted her to find silence, darkness, an empty fridge, bare drawers. A hollow echo of the life she thought would wait for her. I left subtle signs for her to discover. The missing photos, the rearranged furniture, the emptied spaces. Enough to let her feel the absence in the walls. By the time I packed my bags, I felt lighter. Not healed, but changed. I realized betrayal wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning of something new, something stronger. A specter who vanished while she soaked up the sun. But my disappearance wasn't without purpose. I rebuilt. I reached out to an old colleague from Oregon, someone who had once offered me a position years ago. I'd always declined because of the life we'd built here. This time, I accepted. Within days, I had remote paperwork finalized, a new bank account set up, and a modest apartment waiting for me in a city where her shadow couldn't fall. On day 27, I texted her. One line, no punctuation. Hope your month is everything you wanted. She didn't respond. Perhaps she was still feigning guilt. Or maybe Carter was refilling her glass, praising how free she seemed. I wondered if he knew she'd left her husband by design, bartering her way into betrayal as if it were a transaction. But she had no clue what awaited her on day 30. And I couldn't wait to hear her key turn in a lock that no longer worked. The night before she was due back, I parked across the street from the house. I hadn't planned to spy, but curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see her face when the key failed, when the porch light stayed dark, when the utilities were cut, the photos gone, the closets bare, and the furniture stripped away. I sat there in a rented car, under a different name, waiting, not like some heartbroken ex seeking closure, but as a silent observer. When she finally arrived, she looked radiant, tanned, smiling, likely imagining an emotional reunion or expecting me to greet her with a cliched, "Did you find yourself?" Instead, she fumbled with the key, tried again, glanced around as though she might be at the wrong address, then pushed harder against the door. She knocked, waited, knocked again. Peering through the window, she saw only emptiness. Her body went rigid. She stood frozen, processing the void. That's when I drove away. I didn't linger to see if she called the police or screamed my name into the hollow shell of our former home. No, I drove to a quiet coffee shop just outside town, opened my laptop, and hit send. The email contained one attachment, a scanned copy of the letter I'd written during week 2. It began, "Dear Jessa, 30 days without me gave you everything. 30 days gave me clarity. While you were discovering yourself, I uncovered exactly what I'd been married to. I told her everything. About the folder, about Carter, about selling the house she never valued enough to protect, about using my share of the proceeds to leave quietly, without drama or confrontation, just absence. And in that absence, she would confront the consequences she thought she could postpone with a smile and a tan. By the time she called, her number blocked, I was 2 states away, nursing diner coffee and browsing apartment listings. Her voicemail was a chaotic mix of tears and fury. "You left! You actually sold our house? What the hell, Emory? You said I had space." I replayed that moment several times, not out of satisfaction, but because her voice trembled for once, instead of mine. She didn't sound like the self-assured person I knew. Instead, she sounded like someone who had been outplayed. And I hadn't even manipulated or deceived her. I simply let her walk away. What still hurts is that I was ready to fight for us. I was prepared to attend therapy, make changes, and put in the effort. But she didn't want a partner. She wanted an escape clause. She wanted to hedge her bets and return to me as if nothing had happened, as if I were some saved game she could reload when her adventure got dull. I'm not a fallback option. I'm not a footnote in her fantasy life. When she stood in front of that empty house, I realized I had finally reclaimed something, my dignity, which she never expected to lose. I anticipated her call, but I didn't expect her desperation. In 1 hour, she left 3 increasingly frantic voicemails. Her voice cracked, not from tears, but from disbelief, like someone waking up to find their dream was actually a nightmare. By the time she returned, the house was sold, our accounts frozen, and her belongings packed and sent to her mother's house days before she arrived. And Carter, the man she ran to, he vanished too. After the honeymoon phase ended, he lost interest. She likely called him from a motel, realizing her fantasy of returning to normalcy had crumbled. His response, accidentally left on my voicemail, was telling. "You said you had your own place. I didn't sign up for this drama." It felt like listening to cosmic justice in surround sound. But here's what struck me most. She tried to twist the narrative. She accused me of blindsiding her, of betraying her trust. As if taking space, leaving with another man, and lying outright were just minor detours on her journey to self-discovery. According to her, I should have waited patiently, trusted blindly, and given her room to explain. Explain what? That she needed options? That she required space while someone else filled it? While I stayed home battling panic attacks, she gambled with our future. She thought she could taste freedom and then come back to reheat our marriage like a leftover meal. But the microwave's broken now, and the kitchen's ablaze. I didn't respond. I let the silence press down on her, but I observed from afar. Oh, I watched. She attempted to reactivate our joint accounts. They remained frozen. She tried accessing my new login. Blocked. She even posted a vague quote online. "Sometimes the ones you love hurt you the most." Comments disabled, unsurprisingly. Why allow anyone to point out the truth? On day 34, she sent a handwritten letter to my brother's address. My hands shook as I opened it. For a fleeting moment, I hoped it might contain an apology. No such luck. It was a plea. "Please, let's talk. I think we both made mistakes. I still love you." Mistakes, plural, as if my actions equaled hers. I didn't reply, but I kept the letter. Something about holding onto it felt significant, though I couldn't say why. It wasn't about holding on to her memory, it was about reclaiming mine. The man who stopped pleading for scraps and decided to turn the entire table over. Let her sit in the void she created, filling it with regrets and what-ifs. I wasn't going back. She thought she had found me again, or at least that's what she believed. One evening, as I returned home, I spotted her car parked across the street from my new apartment. That same red convertible I'd once begged her not to buy because we couldn't afford it. She was inside, engine off, sunglasses on, pretending to scroll through her phone while stealing glances every few seconds. It was surreal seeing the woman I once cherished acting like a stranger rehearsing an apology. I didn't approach her. Instead, I went upstairs, closed the blinds, and waited. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang twice, followed by silence. Through the peephole, I saw her standing there, clutching a small box. Inside, I later discovered, was her wedding ring. Alongside it lay a note, brief, just 2 lines. "You said 30 days. I never knew that meant forever." Please hear me out. I didn't answer that night. Instead, I sat on the floor, staring at the ring, thinking about how something meant to symbolize eternity now felt like a memento from a journey she took without me. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, the first in months, and realized how pitiful it was that some part of me still clung to the hope she truly regretted everything. But regret isn't love. Regret is realizing your plan failed and the safety net you discarded isn't there anymore. The next morning, she was still there, perched on the hood of her car in an oversized hoodie, eyes puffy, hair disheveled. When I opened the door, she looked at me like I was her last breath of air. "I messed up," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You don't know what it's like to wake up and realize you've destroyed everything." I wanted to yell. I wanted to tell her I did know, that I'd woken up to that feeling for years while she ignored me. But I didn't. I asked one question instead. Was he worth it? She hesitated. That pause spoke louder than any confession. Her excuses followed, stories about confusion, needing to feel alive, but I'd already heard them all in her silence. So I shut the door calmly. No slamming, no shouting, just finality. She screamed my name once, then twice, before her footsteps faded into the distance. A few minutes later, the car engine roared to life, and that was it. The last time I saw her face to face. Strangely, I didn't feel triumphant or strong. I felt empty, but peacefully so, as if the constant noise had finally ceased. Like I'd been living in static, and now there was only quiet. She thought tears and nostalgia could undo what she'd done. But some things can't be reversed. Some things leave stains. The month she requested without me became the lifetime she'll spend without forgiveness. 3 weeks passed. The atmosphere surrounding my life felt heavy, like the eerie calm before a storm, or the silence left in its wake after destruction. Jessa hadn't contacted me since that morning when she showed up outside my apartment with her box of regrets. But I knew better than to believe it was over. People like her don't accept endings, they rewrite them. And just as I was lost in thought, another knock came at the door. It wasn't Jessa this time. It was her sister, Carrara. She stood awkwardly on my doorstep, dressed in workout gear, looking visibly uncomfortable, as though bracing herself for something she didn't want to do. Without much explanation, she handed me an envelope and muttered, "I'm sorry she dragged us into this," before hurrying away before I could respond. Inside the envelope were printed screenshots, social media posts, comments, and one email exchange between Jessa and a friend I hadn't heard from since our wedding. The messages painted the full picture. Her month-long absence wasn't about seeking clarity or resetting. It had been meticulously planned for months. To her friends, she framed it as a test, a way to measure her worth by detaching from what she referred to as the anchor. That's what she called me, dead weight holding her back. The email hit hardest. In it, she joked about auditioning for a new life, casually mentioning that if things didn't work out, at least Emory, her coworker, would appreciate her return. Attached was a photo I never knew she'd taken, me asleep on the couch, drooling, with the cat curled up beside me. The caption read, "Can't believe I used to find this cute." I stood there holding those pages, my heart pounding, hands trembling. Anger wasn't the emotion coursing through me, it was humiliation. There's a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It seeps into your bones like icy water, settling deep within. That's exactly how this felt. I didn't respond, not to Kara, not to Jessa. But a week later, I stumbled across her name again, this time in a LinkedIn post. It turned out Carter wasn't just some fleeting affair. He was tied to a client her company was negotiating with. When her workplace discovered she'd used personal leave to vacation with someone involved in that deal, they fired her quietly, without drama, just like how she tried to slip out of our marriage. If I said I didn't feel a flicker of satisfaction, I'd be lying. But it faded quickly, because revenge wasn't what I sought. What I wanted was closure, and instead I found confirmation. She didn't just lose me, she lost the version of herself capable of having it all. Only more, the man she pinned her hopes on never called her back. After the resort tan faded and the flattery stopped, he ghosted her completely. One by one, the people who once cheered her on began silently unfollowing her online. That's the thing about burning bridges. Sometimes the ground beneath you gives way, leaving no one to pull you out. I wasn't watching to punish her. I was watching to ensure I'd never let someone like her back into my life again. No matter how insistently she knocked, I kept the door firmly locked. Not out of malice, but as an act of self-respect. Something she had carelessly traded away for a fleeting fantasy and couldn't reclaim, no matter how many tears she shed. 2 months later, a small envelope appeared at my new apartment. There was no return address, only my name scrawled in her familiar handwriting, like a ghostly echo tapping on the door. For a moment, I considered tossing it into the trash unopened, but something stopped me. Perhaps a lingering part of me still wanted to understand what she believed she had left to say. The letter wasn't a confession or even an apology. It was desperation cloaked in sentimentality. She wrote about missing what we once were, reminiscing about mornings spent making coffee together and the way I used to warm up her car during winter. She admitted she hadn't realized how good she had it until it was gone. But then came the line that truly sealed her fate in my mind. "I think this needed to happen for me to grow. Maybe one day you'll see it that way too." That's when I laughed, actually laughed. Not bitterly, not angrily, but with a sense of liberation. She saw her betrayal as growth. She framed her absence as some profound lesson I should be grateful for. But here's the truth. I did grow, just not in the way she imagined. I stopped waiting for her to return. I stopped trying to decipher why she felt the need for more than I could give. I stopped believing her chaos was something I had to endure. Instead, I began living again. I moved to a new place, started a fresh job, and even adopted a dog, Theo. Believe it or not, he barks at every doorbell ring and sleeps with his head resting on my knee. He doesn't leave when things get tough. He doesn't take time apart to decide if I'm enough. He simply stays. And so did I, with myself, with my peace, and with a version of life where I don't have to chase someone to feel loved. I never responded to her letter. I didn't need to. The silence spoke volumes. The life I built without her became the answer she thought she deserved but never earned. Let her cling to her 30 days of reflection. As for me, I've claimed the rest of my life. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone finally stood up for themselves? A time when clarity replaced confusion and strength overshadowed doubt? Share your story. It might resonate more deeply than you think.